chairs, racks, cages with spikes. The Inquisition knew how to punish the unfaithful ones. If these devices were still in use nowadays, I truly believe the world would be a better place to live in. This is beyond my interest of knowing. It must be witchcraft, or something to worship the devil.
Saint Kutar is a point-and-click adventure game following the monk Benedek and the deacon Nikolai, who wakes up in the dreary town of Svetikotar with little to no memories of what happened the previous night. Benedek's sister and Nikolai's wife, Victoria, is missing, and one of them may or may not have been involved with the local cannibal cult last night. This was not the holiday trip they signed up for, and they now have to find Victoria, clear their names, and get the hell out of Svetikotar before the cannibals get them. The premise is of course a complete rip-off of the cult classic The Hangover, but I won't hold that against it. I first encountered Saint Kotar the summer of 2020 when I played the demo. I never completed the demo, but I played enough to know that I wanted to play the full game, and I actually ended up backing it on Kickstarter. Now that it has come out, I have mixed feelings on it. The game's presentation can be a nice way to show this. On one hand, the background art can look really nice, and together with the background music, this really helps with building up the atmosphere. The voice actors for the main cast does a solid job as well. However, the rest of the cast is not as good, and some in particular are downright awful. They are planning to update some of the voiceovers, which is a nice gesture, but I can only review what I have played.
Who goes there? I'm Lucia, the owner of this house.
I apologize, miss. I'm Benedict. Victoria is my sister.
I didn't know she had a brother and that he was coming with her to Svetikotar.
Nobody knew. It was a last-minute decision.
So where is she now?
Who goes there? I'm Lucia, the owner of this house.
I apologize, miss. I'm Benedict. Victoria is my sister.
I didn't know she had a brother, and that he was coming with her to Svetikotar.
Nobody knew. It was a last-minute decision.
So where is she now?
There are also a bunch of obvious shortcuts when it comes to the visuals. Some of these shortcuts are just smart choices if you are a smaller studio.
The team consists of 4 core members: Mirko, the background artist and illustrator; Goran, the Unity developer and programmer; Vedrana, our community manager and public relation persona; and me, the writer and game director.
Instead of creating animations for unimportant scenes, they simply fade the screen to black and then fade in again. Instead of focusing on facial animations or lip syncing, they just avoid having any close-ups of the people. Instead of preparing interior environments that you only visit once, the game simply shows the exterior while the characters are indoors at certain locations. These shortcuts are noticeable, but I have no issues with them by themselves. However, they become a problem when it spills over into important scenes. There are important and dramatic scenes where the screen constantly fades to black instead of showing what is actually going on. And sometimes longer scenes with important exposition plays out inside the house while the camera is stuck on the outside. I have no issues, as I mentioned before, with shortcuts and smart usage of resources, and the presentation of Saint Kutar is way above of what most smaller point-and-click teams manages to deliver. Or is it? I find it fascinating that the point-and-click tag is being taken over by adult games on Steam. But back to the game, these issues are noticeable and makes the visual presentation feel very uneven. The developers are once again stating that they will work on this, which is nice and I wish them well, but the game is not in early access and the current state of the game is what it is today. Now for the gameplay. Saint Kutar is a narrative-focused point-and-click game, and the majority of the game is you exploring environments and talking with people. With the exception of one puzzle, there is almost no moon logic puzzles, which is nice, but the reality is that there are very few actual puzzles in this game, and most often it is common sense inventory management. In short, this is not a Sherlock Holmes game where every door is locked by some logic puzzle, and if you are looking for puzzles, then this is not the right game for you. The game is more open than most point-and-click games, and you can miss out on side stories if you don't explore properly. There are some story choices you can do which may or may not have any religious meaning. I honestly do not know, since I am an uneducated swine when it comes to theological matters. Either way, it is nice that these choices are there, but they aren't that many of them and they don't impact the main story that much. So don't expect anything like what is in the Telltale games.
Feliz Navidad, baby!
It's a nice touch, but it doesn't have that big of an impact on the game. Like in most narrative games, the gameplay is there to support the story and atmosphere. So how are these? Well, the atmosphere is good. There is a lot of character to the town and surrounding forest, and the game manages to sell the atmosphere of this little town that is stuck in time and where cruelty and madness is just waiting just below the surface. The game doesn't hold any punches, and there is a lot of gore and adult themes in this game.
Filthy spawns. They want us all, but young and healthy females are their most precious prey. Our poor youth. First they use them to give birth to new souls, then they eat them both.
I am not sure if games like this are rated today, but if it would be rated, then it would be rated mature, for mature man-child gamers, such as myself. The atmosphere is held back a bit by the visual limitations mentioned previously, but what keeps the atmosphere from being truly great is the story, because you can't really separate the two. I have been trying to hold off on talking about the story, because this is a game with very strong religious themes. My secular nation never saw it fit to give me a religious upbringing, and I ended up knowing more about Harry Potter than Jesus Christ. So most of this game's references will probably go over my head. I have never been one to stay silent due to ignorance, but what makes this more awkward is that I don't fully understand the story. I mean, this is not Strangeland, where the whole thing is a big old metaphor for big brain people. There is a concrete story here in this game. I just don't fully get it. You might say that you shouldn't review games if you're not smart enough to understand the story. Well, I would say that has never stopped me before. All joking aside, I am not alone in having a hard time to keep up with everything that happened in this game's plot. I tried to fish for some story discussions on the game's forum, but the people who replied seems to be equally confused. One review claimed that this is just a retelling of The King in Yellow by Robert Chambers. As a man of endless integrity, I read the book, but I have no idea what this guy is talking about. There were only surface level similarities and minor references. I would comment and call him a literary poser if the review wasn't locked for comments. Anyway, this leads us into one issue, which is that even though the game's main narrative really could have used some more explanations, the game still have plenty of sections with very slim connections to the main plot. The King in Yellow reference, I assume the guy is talking about, takes place at the hotel where there is this waved cat called the King in Yellow. At the same hotel, there is also a hedge maze referencing The Shining. Hell, the developers even released a video explaining this.
Did you know, in the psychological horror game Saint Catar, there is a cat called the King in Yellow? This is a reference to a book of short stories written by Robert Chambers, the TV show True Detective is based on. The maze in front of the lodge is inspired by the one in The Shining. The developer, Red Martyr Entertainment, added this in the game as a love letter to the film.
My point here is that this whole section feels completely disconnected to the main story. I have always disliked these kinds of references, but when the main plot feels unfinished, then this kind of fluff really sticks out. Sadly, there is a lot of fluff, and looking back at the events of the game, there are a lot of events that feel out of place and doesn't really benefit the story.
No, and I won't tell you anything if you don't help me first.
How could I possibly help you?
I don't care how you do it, but if you want my help, you will deliver.
The story also has some pacing issues, and the game can be very slow at times. The non-linear nature of the exploration, together with all the side plots, further slows down the development of the already quite vague and hard to understand main story, and it is clear from looking at reviews that a lot of people dislike this. Add to this an abrupt ending and unnatural dialogues, and you end up with a narrative that is not tight. It doesn't really feel thought through, and this is something which a narrative game really need to get right. I am not saying that this is awful, and I found the story and the atmosphere engaging enough, but I would not call it great or even good. I will say though that I like the main characters. Benedek in particular is an interesting character, and you rarely get to play as someone like him. He is very self-righteous, judgmental, and obviously imperfect, and he has some nice character development, even if that also could have been handled better.
Victoria dragged me into this town to make me attend that piddling exhibition in the castle. We never went there, did we?
which means I left the monastery only to spend a horrible night in this house.
There are also plenty of twists and turns in the story, and as mentioned before, the game doesn't hold any punches, and so it is hard to predict what is going to happen. There is also plenty of lore and background information which fleshes out the town, and overall the premise of the story is really nice. All in all, I have very mixed feelings on Saint Kotar. It feels like a genuine passion project, and the game have atmosphere and charm. But the slower pacing and narrative issues means that this is a game I would only recommend to certain people. If you like narrative adventure games and is fine with a slower pacing and a narrative where a lot of things are left open, then I could certainly recommend it if you get it on a sale. Just make sure to keep your expectations in check.